How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of Valet Stories. I'm Alex, and I thank you all for watching once again, and it really gives me a lot of energy when I see you guys commenting on these stories. So on this episode, I wanted to discuss is what all brought you here the first time, which is crazy valet stories. And some of the stories were as recent as this past Saturday. Today is what, Tuesday or Wednesday? So it just happened this past Saturday, and some of these are so crazy you wouldn't believe them if I didn't tell you myself. The first story involves one of my valets, and this is what happens. In the world of valet parking, the valets truly make a lot of connections. If they're college students, they can talk to customers and find out what they do or anything like that. And the customers will ask the same to them. So what are you in school for? What are you studying? Are you computer science, marketing, and all these different things? Well, one of my valets was very close to graduating, and he was really putting himself out there, talking to all the customers, which is good, but he wasn't abusing it. So essentially what happened, he was telling them that he was in school for marketing, and this person was extremely eager to have him come in for an interview. I didn't know about this until after the fact, which I'll get to at the end. But what he did, he actually went for an interview. The guy gave him his business card. The valet, let's call him Chris, forwarded the resume to this person, and they scheduled a time for an interview. So while they're doing the interview, the valet walks in, and the first thing he gets is kind of this vibe of a black couch situation. Some of you might know what it means. If not, we're not going to really get into it. You can Google it. But otherwise, he gets in there and he realizes that this is not well, it is a legitimate company, but what he thought he was going in there for was far from it. He thought he was going in for some type of marketing position or something like that, but in actuality, it turned out to be, how do I say, a male escort. This was a male escort business, and he was going around trying to find decently attractive young guys that would go out on dates with suitors, either male and or female. And needless to say, my valet just booked it out of there, and the next week is when he came into the office and told us about it, and we thought it was so funny. Actually, it was really funny. But we know nobody's going to stay in a career of valet parking cars for the rest of their life. So if he is graduating, congratulations to him. Now he wants to go in the workforce, but he's literally trying to find a true marketing company and not marketing himself to men and women. This next event happened on Mother's Day, which was a few weeks ago. We have, again, one of the busiest restaurants in Atlanta. I think we parked that day probably, it was slow. It was actually slower because of COVID, but we still do about 11 or 1,200 reservations. So what happens, we have this minivan come in, and the minivan was really adamant on not letting us park their vehicle. Their reasoning was COVID. Due to COVID, they didn't want the valets in their vehicles because they have 2 kids and they didn't want to get any types of germs or infections or viruses. So we're like, okay, that's pretty strange. And it was so much to a funk that the manager of the restaurant came outside to discuss with these people. The reason why it becomes difficult because we don't have any self-parking areas. You can't park yourself at this restaurant. At this restaurant, everything has to be valet. You don't go downtown Atlanta or downtown New York City and say, hey, I know I'm in downtown, but I want to park myself. That's not going to happen. You're going to have to park in a parking garage, which is sometimes 3, 4, 5 blocks away. It's same kind of in this scenario too, where people come in, they have to valet park. You really don't have any other choice. So this customer comes in, very adamant. They do not want anybody parking their car, but here's the crazy thing. They're doing all this, we're wearing our masks, but they're not. They don't even have their masks on. Number 2, they're coming into literally the busiest restaurant in Atlanta. If you are so concerned about COVID, why would you come into the busiest restaurant in Atlanta and try to eat on Mother's Day? That just doesn't make sense to me. So in actuality, it turns out they were just trying to avoid valet parking. They wanted to park themselves, but it doesn't work that way. The manager came out and told them that they can park themselves, but they had to give us their keys. Reason why, if we ever had to move the car, we try not to touch the car, then we have access to the car, move it to make it tight or anything like that. We ended up not moving their car. We let them be. They were a little bit difficult, but we did not want to cause any more trouble. But this is really something. Why would you come into a restaurant during COVID at one of the busiest restaurants and you want to park yourselves because you don't want anybody in your car due to viruses? Doesn't make any sense to us. Now, this next story happened this past Saturday. We were working an event, and it turned out it was a 25th anniversary reception, party, dinner, and all that. So they hired the valet company to do that portion of it. They also hired caterers inside. And for private parties, what happens? In the beginning, we have a rush of about 100 people come in, we park all the cars, and then we get to sit for a while. So if the party, let's say, started at 6 p.m., let's say it's over at midnight, between 8, 9, and 10 o'clock, we're going to just be sitting there. And we do get paid for that. But what happened, some of the servers were coming down who were working for the catering company. And this one lady, she was a little off, is the best way of putting it. So she admits to us that her job was there cleaning up after the people and throwing away the trash and washing the dishes. But what she liked to include was she liked to, if anybody had a half glass of drinking of any type of alcohol, she would finish it. What? And so she drank probably 5 different drinks, mixed drinks, and would you believe it or not, about 30 minutes later, she was tossed. She was literally falling down. And the reason I bring this up, because this is a bad reflection on the catering company. They didn't know that she was going to be this way and she was going to be picking up drinks. It turns out that because of the shortage of staff, they pretty much hired her without really knowing her. So with all that, then it just really didn't make any sense. So she was drunk, she got upset, they told her to leave. But what happened, she had Ubered there and she was going to get a ride home with somebody. So she was complaining about not having money. The manager of the caterers, and we're all just sitting back, the valets are just loving this entertainment for the next couple of hours. They end up putting her in an Uber and just sending her home. But before she got into the Uber, yes, she proceeded to pull down her pants and go to the bathroom in the middle of the street. So these are some of the things that we see. These are some of the things that happen. And unfortunately, that could be a bad reflection on the catering company, but they did get rid of her really quickly. So as soon as she started getting loud and obnoxious, I think she was out of there within the next 5 or 10 minutes. So in other episodes, we mentioned the term sliders. Sliders is someone that slides into your car while the car is running and or you run to the ATM machine or you run to go get gas. This happened to Ludacris, which we spoke about, and then it happened to Tyrese not too long ago. It happens a lot here in Atlanta, so that's the new term. It's called sliders. Well, we had one attempt to try to slide into one of our Range Rovers just a couple of weeks ago. Now, the protocol is whenever the valets pull up a car and they don't park it immediately, we sometimes call it NPing, which means non-parked. The keys used to be left around the vehicles, and that's when cars were getting stolen. Now, the valets will actually take those keys and keep them on them until they pass them to the next valet or until they physically park it. But what happened, this valet got out of the car, turned around and walked away, and a lot of times the headlights still stay on these cars for another 30 seconds. While the criminal thought the car was running, hopped in the car, tried to get in it, tried to start it, it wouldn't start. So and when that happened and the valet heard that, he kind of turned around, ran back towards the car. The guy got out of the car, and it was a young kid. He would say probably under 18 years old, hopped into a green Charger or Challenger and took off again. So that was a near attempt of a sliding that could have happened in our parking lot once again. And as I'm recording this, I just read an article not even 1 hour ago that Akon, a famous artist here in Atlanta, and we've done parties for him before, got his Range Rover stolen yesterday at the Quick Trip, which is a local gas station. Same thing, he went inside, tried to go get something, and someone hopped in his car and took off. He had his iPhone in there. They tried to track the car, and they said it was on the south side of the city. He had Louis Vuitton luggage, his passport, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And this sliding thing is a very serious story, and we have to be extremely careful moving forward because at any moment, it only takes us one time to make a mistake, the criminals are always going to be there and they're always going to be looking. So please, if you're out there, please be careful. If you go inside the restaurants or go inside the gas station or go to the ATM machines, turn off your car, take your keys with you. So thank you for watching. We enjoy it, and we will be back soon with more videos. I have more stories that I could have swooshed in here, but I didn't want this video to go too long, so I'll put them on the next one.